And good job, whoever just started the recording. Awesome. So here is kind of where we're headed. We're going to talk today about preparation, number one, for the unknown. And then number two, I know that both market centers are big on the listing side. I was just explaining this to Josh, who's on the call. I want to give you a kind of a plan, a way that both my team and others that we've actually stolen this idea from maximize their current listings to go out and find more listings. So feel free to come on camera if you can. I'm not shy. How you doing, Adrian? So feel free to come on camera. I'm used to seeing faces, and if you're in a spot, of course, where you can. Here's what I'd like you to write down. PACE, P-A-C-E, like Pace Picante. So PACE, here's what it stands for. And it's a coaching conversation that we had as head coaches on Wednesday afternoon. And it's a dialogue that we're using with our clients right now to prepare them for the inevitable, right? The unknown. And the reason why this is so important is, luckily we've gone through this before. However, if you haven't heard or were planning on going to Austin, Mega Camp is going virtual because of what's going on in Austin, because of the COVID stuff. We're seeing it spread throughout the country. It is what it is. We're watching it closely because we're supposed to go back out on the road in October as both coaches, not to mention what's going on here in our market. So we've done this before. We know how to respond. We know where it goes. And yet, as we've started to open back up, as we become a little more passive with the ongoings, as we started to meet more in groups and kind of come back to a little bit of normalcy, we're seeing other parts of the country close down. So I don't want to be the guy that raises the red flag and says, hey, it's going to happen, because who knows? However, I want to give you a way to think about this, that this weekend you can take some time and make sure you have a plan put together. And the reason why I feel this is important is because if we know how we're going to respond to a circumstance, it's easier just to move down the path because we've pre-paced it. And if we don't, then stress occurs and stress happens. And I'll give an example. My kiddo, Ian, he's going into a senior year in college. Awesome. He had 2 classes he had to take this summer. The first one was easy breezy. He took them both at ACC, virtually no big deal. The second was this Adobe art marketing, whatever class. And it took some time. Long story short, he was super proud of his final project. He pulled it out to show my wife and I on Monday night, or Tuesday, after my kiddo's birthday. So we went to dinner. He pulls it out, goes to show us. Well, pops up on his screen that when he hit submit, there was an error and he didn't realize it. So his project was never submitted, his final project. And it was due the day before. So the system wouldn't allow him to submit it. He freaks out. I mean, he's 22, freaking out, worried he's gonna have to retake the class, freaking out because he messed up, blah, blah, blah. So he slowed down and I kind of walked him through it. And it's the same conversation we're gonna have. And I said, okay, Ian, what's the best thing that happens? He goes, he sent an email off. He says, I get a hold of the professor and he lets me turn it in. I said, awesome. How do you control that? I said, an email's great. What else can you do? And he says, well, I've got his number. I said, great. So when are you going to call? Well, after I wake up tomorrow. And I'm like, dude, you are in college and you don't wake up till like 2. So I was like, how about you get up early, call him first thing in the morning, because you don't know what his day looks like. And that way you've got a better chance. I said, and what happens if he says no? What happens if he tells you to go fly a kite? He's like, well, I guess I got to retake the class. And I said, so when are you going to retake it? He said, I'll probably retake it in the spring. And I said, why not retake it in the fall? You already know all the information. You've already got it. Just get it done. So we pre-paced the outcome. And what it did is it gave him the confidence when he made the phone call at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning to have a great conversation, understanding that he wasn't attached to the outcome because he already had a plan in place. Long story short, he called at 10. The professor said, hey, grades are due by noon. Get it to me by 10 o'clock. It was like 9:45. I can get it graded. You're done. That night, the grade showed up. He passed the class. He was done. He texts me and he says, holy cow, you're right, which is always fun for dad to hear. And yet, I think the more important lesson that he learned when we were talking about it is he said it was really a stress reliever to know what was going to happen if he said no. And I tell that story because as we move forward in this environment where we have these unknowns, the way that we keep the stress to a minimum, the way that we control the stress that we may feel about it is understanding how we're going to respond. I hope that we don't have to respond this way. And yet if we do, are we prepared? And Madison and Amy, I know you guys are on. This is also for the market centers and leadership teams. So take this back to the teams. And it's PACE, P-A-C-E. Here's what it stands for. Number one is the primary plan. Let's say nothing changes. We keep going with the status quo. What's our primary plan? What's working for us today? And how do we exponentially create greater results through what's working today? And we'll talk about that in the second half. The A stands for alternative plan. So what happens if we go to a minor shutdown, right? You got to wear masks. You got to figure out what's going on in each county and do those open houses and showings appropriately. Do we have that alternative plan, right? How are we going to operate in an alternative way that's not going to negatively impact our business and actually could positively impact it because we've set up an alternative plan? C, contingent. What's our contingency plan? What happens if we get notified that our kids are coming back home from school or that we have to wear masks all the time and wash our hands 85 times a day and post in the bathrooms how to wash our hands appropriately, which I still put in my own kids' bathroom. And yet, what do we do in the event that we get to that point? And then E is the emergency plan. What happens if we go back, remember back in March when this happened, the first 48 hours, we were deemed non-essential, meaning we couldn't even show a property, we couldn't sell a property, we didn't close on those properties. What happens if we go back to that type of a situation where we're not necessarily deemed non-essential, and yet we're specifically required to operate by a specific set of rules and guidelines where we may have to shut down our offices, where we have to work in a certain manner, in a certain way, to abide by those rules, where our Association of Realtors comes out and gives us a different set of formats. What's the emergency plan? So the reason for PACE, right? Primary plan, alternative plan, or contingent plan and emergency plan is so that we have a knowledge, an understanding of how we will respond in the event that any of these pieces happen. And for those who weren't here when all this happened, awesome, congratulations. For those who joined the market in the middle of all this, thanks for sticking around because, man, it was a mess as we tried to figure it all out. For those who are here now and may have gotten into this business in the last few months, as we're coming back to normalcy, that's what this is for. And what I'm going to ask is y'all get together as agents, as everything else, to make sure that you all have this plan together. How do we work together? How do we continue to create the culture that we have to maximize the opportunities for all of us? Yes, Holly, I will get you a hazmat suit. And yet it almost felt that way, right? It was gloves, it was sanitizer, it was masks, it was wipe down every surface after you walk through and walk out. I mean, it all existed. Your trunk was no longer filled with open house supplies, it was filled with showing supplies and cleaning supplies. And again, do we have that put together so that we don't have to scramble, we don't have to rush to make sure this works? So let's talk really briefly. What's a primary plan? Keep doing what you're doing, right? Be prepared, understand that things could change, and yet keep doing what you're doing. I don't know about y'all. My kids went back to school Thursday. My wife was ready to throw a party. The house was quiet. She could actually think. She didn't have to worry about everybody screaming and yelling. I mean, she was ready to go. My kids, by the way, threw a party when they got home. They're like, "Oh, that was the best day ever. I didn't have to get homeschooled by mom." And yet it all came together. What happens if that shifts, right? What happens if that alternative plan is, hey, your kids are going to have to wear masks. We're going to limit their contact at school, meaning we're going to go back to every other day or whatever. Do we have a contingency plan in place for those of us who have kids? What happens in our businesses if they say, okay, we got to go back to, yes, you can show houses. Yes, you can put stuff under contract, and we still get to use the COVID contingency, and we still have to worry about other pieces that happen. How are we taking care of our own health? I don't care if you've been vaccinated or not. That's up to you. That's your personal decision. And yet, how are you taking care of your own health? So that in the event that this happens, the stress doesn't take over. In the event that this happens, you've got what you need to take care of you. And that's a personal decision for everybody on what's best for you. And yet, I highly suggest you take a moment to say, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing to prevent or protect? What am I doing to get the right exercise, et cetera, so that we're ready to go? Contingency. Okay, what happens if all hell breaks loose? Can I say that? We're recorded. What happens if the world breaks loose, right? And everything gets shut down and we start to get back to this place of, if you're a restaurant owner, you can only have 25% of the people there and we got to go sit outside in 12-degree weather. If we do want to eat out, blah, 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 right? How do we put this piece together? Same with the emergency. So again, it's slowing the process down. And I know it sounds, the sky is falling chicken little, and yet it gives us confidence when we have this set up. In the event that anything like this happens, we're there. Hopefully it doesn't. We just don't know. You know, I got a call on Wednesday with Austin and they're completely shut down. Now, here's the funny part, and the backside to it is 70.3% of those that live in Travis County, which is where Austin's at, are vaccinated. So as much as we want to make this a vax, non-vax issue, the reality of it is, it doesn't matter. I just talked to, got off the phone with somebody in Florida, South Florida. They're going back to kind of a phase 1 shutdown where the market center staff is required to wear masks, where the kids are required to wear masks in school, et cetera, et cetera. It's not crazy. And yet, as you've seen, they're starting to see the surge. So just be prepared. And Holly, you nailed it. People are fear-based. Understand what happens with our clients. Do we have that ability? Are we prepared to have these conversations with our clients? For those of us who were part of this early, the first 60 days were crazy. Our clients weren't sure if they wanted to sell their house. They weren't sure if they even wanted to show their house because of the concern of what happens if somebody brings it into my house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As soon as we started getting past that, our market went psycho. And we were up double digits in appreciation. By the way, if you own property, congratulations. If you own multiples, even better, congratulations. And that's what happened. And we're still in the middle of that. Do we have the conversations? Have we had those conversations with our clients? Here's one way you can be prepared. It's what we call the 4 C's. Here's how you have a conversation, 4 C's. And Amy, I'll have you put this in the chat too. Thanks for doing that. 4 C's are this: care. Our first call, even when our calling today, it's care. We've got to show care. The second C is we have to come from contribution. So it's care, it's contribution, it's curiosity, right? So care, contribution, curiosity, and then use common sense. And here's what that means. I'm going to give you a buzz. I'm going to say, hey, how are you doing? And then I'm going to listen. If they say great, I say great. Tell me something that's great. We are pre-programmed to say everything's good. We were pre-programmed to say everything's great. The reason why I say good morning at 3 in the afternoon is I want to know if you're actually paying attention to what I say, or if you're just walking by doing your thing. By the way, no judgment, walk by and do your thing. However, if you're paying attention, you either say good morning or you ask what I mean. And yet it's just a matter of how do we slow down? So in this conversation, the first C is care. We're going to slow down. We're going to show care. Hey, how are you doing? They say, great. You say, tell me something great. Well, actually, there's nothing great. I just got in a car accident. Okay, let's talk about that. And now all of a sudden you're going to get to the real outcome. So you got care, you got contribution, or it's care, contribution, compassion are the first 3, and then common sense. I think I said a different C. So care, contribution, compassion, and then common sense. So you get through that process. And let's say something is going on. It's the conversation of how can I help you? You know, what are you looking for? Sounds like, would it be helpful if, right? Just some simple dialogue. Compassion, if something's not going right, show compassion. We are human. They're human. This isn't about what we should say. It's about what we should ask. And we learn about what we ask by how we listen. So slowing down just to listen, and you'll find out what's going on. I'll give you an example. My wife had a call with a friend of hers. They called up, did the whole thing. Now they don't do the tell me something good. It was just, hey, it's good, it's good. And this was actually in person at the open house because the kids have a brand new school. And they're talking, and the conversation went like this: hey, how are things going? Great. Who are your teachers? Blah, 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 right? Care. They start going down the list. They realize that our kids who've been best friends since kindergarten don't have any of the same classes or any of the same teachers. So both the moms looked at their kiddos, our kids, and said, hey, are you guys okay with this? And they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. We'll see each other in the hallway. We'll blah, 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 blah. We'll see each other at lunch. For them, it was no big deal. You would have thought the world had fallen down for my wife and Luca's mom. And when they realized the kids had no big deal, they're like, okay, right? And that yet they showed compassion. There's compassion for each other first. And then they showed care. And here's the funny part. Once they realized the kids didn't have an issue, they went on to their own mom conversations and off they went. For us, the conversation could sound like this: hey, it's Jake. How you doing? They say, good. Awesome. Tell me something good. Honestly, what's good is my kids went back to school yesterday. You say, really? So what are you doing now they're back at school? Boom. They start talking about what's going on. You just start listening. You ask more questions. Off you go. Common sense is this: if it makes sense for you to ask for business, you ask for business. If you have an inkling that you should ask, you ask. All too often what happens is we feel like we should ask, the conversation's leading us there, and then we justify not asking and blame it on common sense. There will be a natural progression to a conversation that will lead you to that opportunity. They may ask you, how are things going? You say, great, you know, it works, doing awesome. Even through all this COVID stuff, it's been really good. That's all you need to say. And they say, okay, tell me more about what's going on. And you could say, why do you ask? That's the next question. All too often people say, tell me what's going on in the market. And we puke market statistics. Stop puking market statistics. Ask why they're asking. What they may say is, you know what, I saw a house down the street go on the market and sold in 2 days for like 200 grand more than anything else the market sold for. Is that really what's going on? And you say, it could be happening in your neighborhood. Why do you ask? Well, if they can get that much for that, for their piece of crap, I could probably get more. You say, great. So what would be the number that you wouldn't say no to? It may be reasonable. And all of that comes through questions. So are we listening to have the right conversation, ask the right questions? And common sense will lead you to having that conversation. Here's the cool part. Naturally, we can guide the dialogue to that point just by asking the right questions. So again, going back to pace, as you sit down this weekend or the next few hours, whatever you want to do, just put your pace plan together. What's your primary plan right now? What's working? How do you expand on it? How do you maximize and capitalize on it? What's your alternative plan? What happens if? What's your contingency plan? What if it gets bad? And what's your emergency plan? What happens if tomorrow the world shuts down? How do I still make this work? If this is your primary business, if this is your primary source of income, you shutting down is not necessarily an option. So what can you do to make sure you're there? Right? Have you built up those savings reserves? Have you put those pieces together? Watch Ted Lasso instead of playing Tiger King. Or you could just talk to my wife and she regurgitate the whole thing. I swear she watches every episode 18 times. And yet it's a good show, Holly. It is. He pulls his
Jake, I want to toss in here.
Go for it.
Something that a gratitude that I have, because I got sick right as the lockdown happened, and nobody knew what to do, what they were doing, everything else. I was kind of unconscious the first week, so I didn't participate in anything. But you guys started having morning Zooms, just 20 minutes. Of course, I think at first we kind of blew that out of the bucket and went way over, but we laughed, we talked. I mean, I was literally laying in bed with the computer sitting on me, couldn't even get up. And, but having that contact and having people, I mean, everybody was in their pajamas and, you know, whatever they were wearing. And then the happy hours that we did and the craziness, that kept me going. And I don't know if people know that, but that kept me going because I was so isolated. And it really mattered to have that contact. And so if something like that happens again, one of the things I'm going to keep in mind, that I will keep in mind, is how important that reaching out is to people, because you don't know what their situation is and how isolated they are and how that conversation might keep them going.
Exactly. Well, and you hit a really important piece. Our clients have the same opportunities. So how do we connect with them? How do we create opportunities for us to connect with them in a way that in this format works, right? And it goes back to, we've been familiar, we've been doing this in a way that people are used to. You know, it's nothing now to say, hey, jump on Zoom. It's not. It just is what it is. We were planning a vacation, a big family vacation. Actually, my dad was paying for it, so it was even better. And yet it was a matter of getting all of us together. Now, I'm the oldest of 6, getting us all together every Sunday morning to figure, or Saturday morning, to figure out the details of the plan. And they're like, okay, let's jump on the phone. I was like, no, I'm going to send out my Zoom link. We're just going to all jump on Zoom. We'll see everybody face to face. You know, and the kids would pop out in the morning, shirtless or whatever, my boys anyway. And off we go. And yet we're having this great face-to-face conversation. And that's what I think, like you said, Holly, is so important, is there's that personal connection that sometimes get lost in this reality. And we're even seeing in our offices, as more and more agents are coming back into the office, there's a different energy, there's a different vibe. So it's how do we do that, right?
People
Going back
need
to
to see that face.
Yeah, you get to see it. Well, and going back to your businesses, if we do have to shift into a contingency plan, are you prepared to go back online with your listing presentations? Are you prepared to go back online with your buyer presentations? If not, go back through, start to rehearse that. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, grab an Adrian, grab the Maces, grab a William, who went through this process, who already have these plans in place that can help you through that. Because truly it's about working together to get through these pieces. And that way you don't have to miss a beat if all of a sudden we close down tomorrow and you've got a listing appointment on Sunday.
So we had 2 deals falling apart during the week that I was sick. And one of them was mine and one of them was Mark's. One deal fell out. We had to get it back under contract when you couldn't show a house.
Mm-hmm.
And mine, the problem is I was sick trying to keep it from falling apart, and I probably almost made it fall apart versus making but it closed while I was in the hospital, and we just kept going. And so those of us that have been through it probably aren't going to freak out as much as those that haven't been through it. And yet it's so much hard. Everything is harder. So it is a problem. It's just, I think, we won't have to fight all the battles that we fought before. And so talk to somebody that's been through the battles, and let us know. I mean, we're there to be there for you. Yep. So you're not just flailing in thin air.
Well, and that's where I think one of the big benefits is on this one is we've done this already. We're not flying by the seat of our pants hoping anymore. It's been done. We know how to operate and how to work with this. So before I skip to the next piece, which is a primary plan of how do we maximize what we're currently doing, what are your takeaways just from this conversation? What are your questions? Feel free to jump in, anybody. We're here for you. What are your questions? What are you taking away from this so far?
I'll tell you, I wrote down that as a market center, we really need to get together as leadership, and we need to put those plans into place. What happens if our office shuts down again? How can we continue to reach out to our agents? How can we prepare our agents? Should something happen that we do have to go back to the emergency plans, having the people like the Hollies and the Williams teach breakouts or teach classes on what did we do to pivot and what worked so that we can prepare our agents to do the same.
Yep. And I like to say I was a Boy Scout, and the Scout motto is be prepared. And I was a Boy Scout, an Eagle Scout at that. So what else? What are the other takeaways? What are the other questions or ahas?
I want to throw out there that if you are an agent and you get sick and this is any time, reach out early. Don't wait till you're on your way to the hospital going, excuse me, I have 2 deals that are falling apart. I'm on my way to the hospital. Debbie, can you, I mean, you need, reach out, or if you can't, I mean, I think part of leadership is also being aware that if somebody's sick or not participating that you think would be, why aren't they? So maybe we need to find out and then find out if they need help.
Yep.
Because I think that's the one wheel that fell off the wagon, is that I was basically unconscious for a week and nobody knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody knew to help. Yeah.
Those care calls again, and having people in place in the market center that are willing, and leadership as well, because a lot of us are licensed, having those people available to say, hey, you take care of your health, give me your deals, I'll take care of them, I'll keep you posted on what things are happening so that you can focus on getting healthy.
And that's the cool part about our culture. It really is. And that extends past just the market centers. I mean, in our coaching world, same thing happens. We all work together. So Josh, I might have you help out a little bit on this, since I just explained it to you, and the best way for you to learn it is also to teach it. So Josh approached me the other day, and we were talking about how do we maximize the listings, right? How do we maximize, all too often what happens in today's market, a listing means a paycheck. Yes or yes. A buyer means I'm going to fight to get a paycheck, where a listing means I'm going to get one. All I got to do is put on the market price, or right, it's going to be gone in 12 seconds. Woohoo, I'm getting a paycheck. So we got to slow the process down, because your best leverage in today's market is listings. It's your best method, and it's your best marketing. So when you look at the model, right, it's the triangle, and the base of the triangle is leads. One side is listings and one side is leverage. So that base, when your business is built on a strong base of leads, it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to develop, and it's going to create consistency. Now, what I would say is take leads and put listing behind in front of it, because what we're really looking for is listing leads. And here's why that's important. When we get a listing, what naturally happens on the other side? Buyers show up. When we focus on listings, what naturally happens? Buyers show up. If we don't focus on listings and we just focus on buyers, who do we get?
More buyers.
Who do we miss?
Listings.
Right? Isn't that funny? So that's why I say listing leads, because by focusing on listing leads, everything else is going to fall into place. The challenge sometimes is we're like, oh, I got this great idea. And we start to build on these great ideas. And if you turn that triangle upside down and you say, hey, I'm going to build on great ideas that may not be proven, that triangle is not as stable. It could fall over. So use what's proven, use what other teams, my team included, have really built their base and their foundation on, which is listing leads. With that being said, you do the listing lead focus, you're going to earn more listings, and then you got leverage. Many times we believe leverage to be people. On that leverage side, what I'd like you to write is this. It is systems, it's models, it's tools, it's accountability, and then it's people. Systems, models, tools, accountability, then people. And the reason why we go there is because to create systems, models, and have tools is less expensive than paying for people. So if you're just starting to grow your business, let's create systems, models, and tools to create the most profitable business you can. And that way you can enjoy the profits of your business and use those profits to go do other things, right? Buy investment property, do the pieces you want to do that create your passive income and your passive wealth. The challenge sometimes is we make more profit, which means we go spend more money and we buy that fancy car and we go buy the fancy house. And before you know it, we're broke. Slow down, hold on to your budget for a bit and earn the right through the passive income you receive to go do those other things. That's my passion. You'll hear that all the way through it. Why is it a passion? Because we own a bunch of rental properties. We just closed on a duplex. We got 2 more under contract. We just became minority owners in 2 apartment complexes, blah, blah, blah. It's created this ability for me to go out and do what I love in 12 years. You all can do it too. I'm not special. Honestly, I mess up more than most. You all can do that too. Just make sure you cover that. So how do we create this whole concept of a listing leads base that earns more listings? And how do we leverage, how do we create systems, models, and tools and the accountability around that to continue to drive more listings? So Josh, dive in and I'll let you share. It's a simple process that we utilize. This comes from my team. It also comes through, honestly, we stole this and then we plussed it. It's an Ignite. It's called the 7th level listing or 7th level open house. And then we just plussed it. We added our own magic to it after talking to other teams across the country. And I just shared it with Josh. So Josh, share with us. What's that system? What's it look like?
Sure. So my biggest takeaway from talking to you was more so like, and I think this applies to the last thing that you talked about, talking about the pace, is stop working in silos. I feel like as real estate agents, we tend to kind of focus on one thing and we kind of miss out on all the other opportunities in front of us. And this is no different. So in terms of listings, so you go on a listing appointment, you sign that contract and then you give them the timeline. So say it's a Thursday and they need a week to get things ready. And then you're going to go active that next Thursday. So there's a series of events that get you from point A to point B with any transaction, whether you're just listing, but now you're doing a little bit of extra steps so that at the end of that closing, when you actually close, you're not only getting that one and only check, you also have a lot more leads, or at the very least, close to 100 plus people added to your database. So with that being said, you get your pictures done, say it's Thursday, by Monday. You get all the things that it requires for the listing to look like a legitimate professional listing. And let me just look at my notes. So now talked on that Thursday, that next Monday following up before you do your open house on Saturday for 3 hours and doing your showing Saturday and Sunday, you're going to call. You're going to call at least 200 houses in that neighborhood. And then the next day you're going to call 200 houses, say the other neighborhood that is maybe not on the same echelon. So we call them move ups. So say they have a $300,000 house and the house that you're selling is 400, 500. How are they going to be able to move up to that next echelon? So the call goes like this, is just, you're just letting them know that, hey, I have a listing at 123 Main Street. I'm a nosy neighbor myself. I'm sure that you wanted to know, and I just wanted to do my due diligence, let you know that this is going on the market. So you do that Monday, Tuesday, you get everything else set up like you usually would for a listing. That Friday, either the afternoon or the evening, you're door knocking. So you're going and hitting all of the people that you contact, and you're knocking on as many doors in that neighborhood as you can with physical invitations to the open house the next day, saying, hey, if either you or someone else that are looking to buy a house, especially in your neighborhood, how great this neighborhood is. And just a side note that I'm talking, I remember when you are in that listing conversation, that consultation, you're not only, because everyone knows, okay, 4 bedrooms, 3 bath, that's great. It's got a yard. Okay, so does every other house in Colorado. What made them move to that neighborhood? What's the lifestyle look like? Is there a pool? If there is a pool, then your kid, it's nationally ranked. It's your kids can now join the swim team. There's more so than just the house. There's a lot more that neighborhood can provide to you. And if you can play off of that, you're going to get a lot more leads coming into the door when that open house is going to show up. So
before you move on, here's the key to that is, as you're doing your listing, as you get it signed, this is one of the follow-up pieces you send, which is just a handful of questions about, tell me about the neighborhood. Tell me what you love about the neighborhood. Tell me what caused you to buy in that neighborhood. What are some of the amenities that you've been able to enjoy? So just little things. And what it does is it allows the seller to actually write the description for you. Because now what you're selling is a lifestyle versus, hey, I got this 4-bed, 3.5 bath, 2,200 square foot, blah, 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 like everybody else. They've written the description. Hey, this house is in a beautiful neighborhood with a private pool. It's got 4 tennis courts. It's got the most tennis teams in the country in this division. They've got swim teams on Saturday. How else could you live your life? So you're just painting a picture of lifestyle. Who's your buyer is where you start, and then you paint a picture of lifestyle towards that. And then, like Josh said, have your timelines. So we work backwards on that timeline, and we typically don't list or put a house on the market until Wednesday or Thursday morning. There's 2 reasons for that. Number one, it gives us time to build the excitement, the momentum, and it gives us time to do our part. Number 2 is when you have that system in place, it gives a lane for our assistant. She knows if we don't have everything ready on Wednesday, it doesn't go live until the next Wednesday. And it gives our sellers a timeline. So it's just about pre-pacing that expectation, and it creates efficiency. You're on, Josh.
All right, awesome. So yes, we're now on to that Saturday, the open house. So you have whatever you want to do, whether it's electronic sign-in sheet, some type of sign-in sheet. But something that Jake was saying that I personally didn't even think about is having a list of other listings around that area that fit the same type of check marks that this house that you're selling has. Because let's be honest here, one buyer can buy this house. And when you have a bunch of other buyers coming and they don't get it, how are you going to capture those leads on your side without them going somewhere else? And what you're doing with that circle prospecting, door knocking, and calling is you're getting people in the door that are probably unrepresented. Because I'm sure a lot of you agents see in the open houses that you've been doing in the last few months is a lot of people that are walking through the door are already represented. You have a lot of serious buyers in this market because it's just very competitive. That's just kind of the name of the game. So you're doing your due diligence, finding people that show interest. So it's a friend of a neighbor, it's the things, the indirect people that you'd never interact with unless you actually do this. So now you have people that are showing up to this open house that are more than likely unrepresented, that are more so in the stage that they're interested. And by giving them other options besides the listing that you have right in front of them, then you can say, hey, if you're interested in any of these, I'm done here at 1 o'clock. Why don't we go look at some of these? And then you're capturing that lead. At the very least, you're starting that conversation so that you can add them into your database. But who knows? Now you might potentially have another buyer. So after that open house, you then nurture the leads that came in. So whether it's a handwritten note to the agents that showed up with their clients, whether it's the people that showed up that were unrepresented, just making sure that you're nurturing those leads, they don't go unnoticed, because you never know what that nurturing could lead to in the future. So from there, you email them, you write your handwritten notes, whatever. Offers are due on Monday. No offer will be looked at until Monday, and then offer will be accepted and everyone will be let known Monday at noon. So after that, after you pick someone, you call that same 400 people that you called on that previous Monday just to let them know, hey, just wanted to let you know that we accepted an offer. And what's the first question that they're going to ask? How much did it sell for? I would ask that personally. You say, well, I can't tell you until it closes, but why do I do this? Why do I follow up with you when we do close? Why don't I get your information? Why don't I get your email address? That way you can quite literally add them to your database so that when you do close, you can follow up with that same 400 people. And I was like giddy when Jake was telling me this, but you call them at closing, be like, hey, just wanted to let you know that we got the very top dollar that we could have for this home. And I just wanted to congratulate you. Congratulate me? Why are you congratulating me? Oh, well, because of that, now your house is worth an extra $15,000. Let's talk. What can that extra $15,000 do for you? And then you've already had those touch points throughout just a week that they already know who you are. you're kind of plunged into their lives as it is. And now this is like the call to action. It's like, hey, I did this. These are the results of what I personally did, me and myself and my team. Let's have a conversation. What's the harm in it? If you can get an extra $15,000 at minimum of what your house is worth, let's have this conversation. So I don't know if I'm sure I missed some things, Jake, but that's
Oh, you're
that was kind of my takeaways.
So the whole 15,000 conversation, the other way that we talk about approaching, and this is something my team does, is, hey, if you had 15 grand in your pocket today, what would you do with it? And, you know, and it might be remodel a bathroom, it might be buying a car, it might be this, it might be that. And, you know, what you start to find out is what their motivation is. And it doesn't mean we have to sell their house. Our job, going back to the 4 C's, is to provide contribution, is to be that resource. So if they want to remodel, awesome, let me get connected with my general contractor. They could talk to you about what it's going to look like. How about I swing by, let you know what the house is worth, and we can figure out how much you owe. And that way we know if you have any equity, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's those pieces. There's a couple things that I do need to point out. Otherwise, Debbie and Donna will get really mad at me. So the first thing is this. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Anytime we're making calls, anytime we're reaching out, please follow the TCPA. Madison's smiling, it's fun. And yet, please follow this. This is a piece where there are folks out there just looking to sue you. And they won't just sue you on one call, or sue you on every call that you make, which could put you potentially out of business. So just make sure you're aware of that and you're following. Number 2, as you put all these pieces together, the key is follow-up, right? The key is how you show up. So you may call and say, hey, I've got multiple offers. Here's where we're at. You may actually go door knock and cross out all the pertinent information on those offers and say, look, we got 3 offers on this property and we could only have 1 buyer. So who do you know that may want to purchase in this neighborhood or may want to sell in the neighborhood? They may say nobody, they may say somebody, and you end it with, well, would you think about selling it? Or what would be the price that you would actually consider if you're able to get it? You never know. And yet it's pursuing that conversation. The other reason why we go through these steps is if you just hold an open house and you just put out 1 million signs, typically you're going to get an agent with their buyer. This is how we go find more listings. This is how we find more buyers. And I don't know about y'all, when a house goes on the market in your neighborhood, if your spouse is anything like mine, or if you're anything like me, and an open house happens, we pay attention. And if they put out 2 signs and they get 2 people through in 2 hours, we know it was only 2 people, we pay attention. You go through this process, you put out a gazillion signs on every street corner leading you in, and it's big, and you got people there nonstop all day, every day, the neighbors notice it. They pay attention too. And many times what they're going to say is, well, how did you do that? How did you get so many people? What was your trick? Well, it's not a trick, it's a system. And I'd love to talk to you more about the system. Tell me why you ask. Well, I'm thinking about selling my house. Awesome. How about we do this? Why don't I pull some information, take a look at it. We go through our pre-qualification, and then I'll stop by tomorrow afternoon. We can go through both the system and your property. Holly, great question. Where do you get the numbers? We actually subscribe to a service. If you don't want to pay the money to subscribe to the service, it's expensive. A lot of times title can pull it for you. What I would say is have them scrub it against the TCPA. The service that we subscribe to automatically does that. And yet just be cautious and understand that that's there. So Holly, you said you followed this and you've been very effective. Tell us more.
So when you first joined at the Market Center and started teaching this, Mark and I took this to heart, and we haven't done the calling part so much as the door knocking part. And we always, the other thing, the one thing that Josh didn't put in, and maybe you've changed it, is inviting the neighborhood to be there, do an open house for the neighborhood that starts an hour ahead of the public open house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. We invite them. Well, we're going to invite you guys to come in before everybody gets there. I know everybody, you guys want to see this. We also say, just wanted to let you know that we're having an open house. There's going to be more traffic. So, just be aware so that, that's just a courtesy. So it gives you another reason to be talking to them. But we always get neighbors there. By the time the public open house occurs, we have people in the house.
Mhm.
So usually we do that before the showings even start. The showings start the same time as the open house starts. And we end up with showings coming in. Well, it looks like it gives the appearance that there's a lot of interest in the house. And it helps us get more and higher offers and get them faster because it gives the appearance that there's a lot of people interested in the property. And we have got, and it has worked like a charm. Repeatedly, we've gotten leads for listings, we've gotten leads for buyers. It is phenomenal.
So what did it take for you guys to create this system? Because now it's a system, it's a model, it's something you guys utilize on a regular basis.
You guys kindly shared your templates and then we made them into our templates. And so we have the templates and all we got to do is switch out the address, the house info on those templates and if we are using a picture on a house, I think most of them we're not using house pictures, it's just the house information. When we print them up, we slice the pages in half because it's door knocker size. And we grab a thing, we each of us grab a roll of tape and we go and we knock. And if they don't answer, we stick the flyer on the door. And again, it says open house and invitation. One side it's got invitation, the other it's got information on both sides. And it just allows you to hit a lot of people in a short amount of time. 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, we have found we catch so many people at home.
Mhm. So a couple things we played with. As we get into football season, even though the Broncos suck, for some reason, people still want to watch them. So just know that that's probably not the best time to hold an open house. As you get into kids' activities, maybe 11 to 1, 11 to 2 on a Saturday isn't the best time. Flip it to the evening. Maybe it's a drive time on Friday night, right? Maybe you're doing it from 4 to 7 on a Friday night. And if that's the case, adjust your timeline. The biggest key to all of this is setting the right expectations. Was that a correct the Broncos suck, or was that a correct not to have open houses during the Broncos? Just kidding.
Bud, I was talking to Bud yesterday and he said his most attended open houses are Thursday and Friday evenings.
Yeah. People are really liking the drive time stuff. When we host a Friday evening, I tell you what, it's crazy. So just know there's different times you can do it. And yet the key is always have a set expectation. Our sellers know that if they don't have their stuff ready to go on Monday, we're not listing until the next week. Because we need pictures back, we get their approval on it, we get all the information put together to give our staff adequate time to get their pieces done and to give us adequate time to start making the calls. The move up is key. Hey, I've got this house coming. And again, here's what I want you to write down. And this is another key to all of this is we need to be solution finders, not salespeople. We've got to find solutions for people, not sell them on why they need to go. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm calling in the move up neighborhood, right? We've got a $600,000 listing. We're calling a $400,000 or $500,000 neighborhood. This one's got a 3-car garage. They've got 2-car garages, whatever. And we're calling through. We're saying, hey, I've got this house across the way that you may be interested in. Have you ever thought about moving into something bigger? Or it could be, hey, you bought your home for, how long did you buy your house? 5 years ago. Awesome. Does it still work for you? You're potentially looking for something else. Well, we'd like something a little bit bigger, or the kids are growing and they've got all their toys, whatever. All you're doing is asking questions. You say, well, we've got this house that we're going to hold open on Saturday. We'd love to have you come by, take a look at it. If it's the right fit, obviously we can help you through that process. Oh, I don't know if I can afford it. Pause. There's 2 ways that we know. Number one, they probably got a bunch of equity they don't even know about that they could roll over into this house. And with rates where they're at, it may have a small impact on their mortgage, not a huge one. Number two, It's what we call house hacking. Meaning you take a look at it and maybe they're in a $400,000 house and they got a $1,200 mortgage payment and now the house will rent for $2,200. Rent the house for $2,200 if you want to. Take the extra $1,000, put it towards your new mortgage, and now you're actually paying less. We're just looking for solutions to help people get there. And by the way, when you start them in investing, that means they start buying property every year, not once every 10. So just understand there's ways to put these pieces together when we're looking to help them find solutions, because it's about them, not selling that they need to do something because it's about us. And that's the biggest key to it all. So going back to the triangle, it's listing leads that lead to listings that lead to leverage, right? Systems, models, tools, accountability, and people. How do you hold yourself accountable? You tell your seller what you're going to do. Your seller, when they know what you're going to do, now you're holding yourself accountable because you just made a promise to somebody you're going to serve. And then as you get busier and busier, as you have more and more listings, as your business starts to expand, William and I were talking about this today, then you find that next who. You find that assistant. You find that transaction coordinator that can take some of those pieces off your plate, which allows you to make sure you're doing this job that drives your business. All too often what happens, and Madison and I have had this conversation, is we go focus on what's easy, not what's necessary. And our job in this situation is focus on what's necessary that both supports our sellers and our business instead of getting lost in the easy. Holly says transaction coordinator day one. If you want to check and not get one 2 weeks late like me, hire a transaction coordinator. Madison, Bud Doyle's teaching. Tell us more.
I was just going to tell y'all, Bud Doyle is teaching an open house breakout at Mega Camp on the 24th. So make sure you attend. If you have not heard about that, reach out to leadership. If you are on this call and you haven't, and you're in my market center, then read something because it's everywhere. And he's going to do a follow-up class on open houses, a master class in Park Meadows. Y'all will be invited to join as well. It's going to be a 2-hour class. Just he's going to go in depth everything he does for open houses and how he's built his business on that. So,
and we're not talking about a small business. We're talking about $400,000 or $500,000 in commission business.
Yep.
So, question: what are your ahas? As we wrap up, we went through a lot of stuff really fast. And yet, what are your ahas? What are you taking away from this? What are you going to implement?
I would say my biggest ahas, I do a lot of things well, but there's always something to learn and implement better. I feel like I've got some great open house and open house strategies, but even going back around the 7 levels, I'm like, ooh, I should be doing that. Or, oh, I should be adding that because it just makes sense. So there's always something to learn and something to implement, no matter where you're at in this business either.
So William, I love you say no matter where you're at. How many listings have you taken this year?
Oh my goodness. I can't count. It's over. It's almost 17.
So no matter how busy you are, there's still opportunity.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's still opportunity. Even with my open houses, so I've had 4 listings because of open houses this year. But there's even more that I could be doing to leverage those listings at the open houses.
Mm-hmm. What else? What are other takeaways? Thank you, William.
A question, would you door knock? Then if you're going to do, switch the strategy to doing a Thursday or Friday open house, then door knock like Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yep. I would typically door knock at around 24 hours before. If you're going to go during the week, go in the evenings when people are actually home. Again, it goes back to working smarter, not harder. Sometimes we go in the morning because we know we're not going to have to talk to anybody and we get to say we did the work. Go when you're going to be able to talk to people and maximize that opportunity. And yeah, just move your timeline back a little bit. What else?
So I don't know if it was you or Josh, that mentioned this, but just when you're calling after the home closed to talk to them, congratulations, your house is worth more, conversation versus just letting them know what it sold for and just kind of really fishing for questions. I think that will gain a much better response. So that was brilliant.
It's a fun one because people are like, what? And then you get to have the conversation. A couple other pieces that we may have skimmed over really fast is one of the questions that we always ask when we're door knocking is, would you like to be the first one to know what the house sold for? The purpose of that question is to get them to say yes, which gives us permission to recontact them, going back to TCPA. So of course they say yes, you say, great, let me get your email. Because then you can plug it into your MLS. And anytime there's a change in that one property, they get notified. It's real easy. Although I haven't done the MLS stuff forever, so I might be wrong, just an FYI. The other piece is you can also put in command with an alert. So that when that house sells, you are reminded to send the information out. The other piece to that is because they said yes, you get to follow up. And the call is, hey, just want to make sure you got the information I just sent you because this is what the house sold for. And all the purpose behind all of this isn't to go find necessarily the next listing, even though that's what will happen. It's to slow the process down so you can build your database. Because the larger your database is, the bigger your business has the ability to grow as long as we communicate with it. And by doing this process, you're looking at adding 50 to 100 people to your database every time you have an open house. So what happens when you have one every week and you're adding 50? That's 2,500 people you could add to your database every month, every year.
Yeah, and no one says you can't do an open house every week on someone else's listing.
100%. If you want to do an open house, if you're new in the market, literally shoot it out to your market center, post it on Facebook. I'm sure somebody has an open house that you can hold. Because I know what the amount of listings that Adrian and William do, I mean, you probably can't hold every house open that you guys list. So reach out, they're there, take advantage of it and go build a business. Any other questions, any other ahas before we wrap up? Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. I trust it was worth it. Have a great day. If you have any questions, you guys can always reach out. We're here to help you out. Until next time.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah.